you need to be the role model, because even if they're tuning you out or it feels like they're tuning out, they are watching. So
Yeah.
just know that they're watching you every second. They're watching how you communicate people. They're watching how you handle people in the checkout line at a store, how you're communicating with your friends. They're watching how much time you're spending on the phone, which again, I have an issue with that as well. So again, you just need to really be the role model and also realize that they grow up so fast. So now's the time to reinforce these skills.
Welcome to Gap to Gig, the show for dads navigating the in-between season when work, identity, and priorities start asking different questions. Here we talk about what that season looks like and how to move through it with intention. I'm your host, Michael Jacobs, and today I'm joined by Rob Heller, entrepreneur, youth development innovator, and founder of Boost, a personal development program designed to help teens and young adults build the people skills, character, and mindset that traditional education often overlooks. After selling his insurance firm for 8 figures, Rob noticed something surprising. Many young people entering the workforce had academic credentials, but lacked some of the fundamental life and interpersonal skills needed to thrive. That realization, combined with his desire to better prepare his own children for adulthood, led him to create Boost. Today, Rob works with schools, youth organizations, parents, and educators to help young people develop the skills that can shape the trajectory of their lives long after graduation. Rob, welcome to Gap to Gig. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I love your mission. A lot of stuff out there for moms, but not enough for dads. So I appreciate you giving us fellow dads a resource. So it's good stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'd love to start with the story behind all this, because from what I know about you, Boost wasn't born necessarily from a business idea. It started much closer to home. Can you kind of take us back to that moment? What was happening in your life with your kids or in your work that first made you think like something important is missing here?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Michael. So really, I have 3 kids, and when my oldest was a teenager, so this was 20 years ago. He's now in his early 30s. 20 years ago, of course, like most dads, I would love them to go to a good college and get straight A's and maybe be an athlete and those kinds of things.
Right.
But I really, at the end of the day, I knew that there was a certain skill set that if he could develop, it would just give him a better chance to have a better life. I mean, it's as simple as that. So was, my wife and I were certainly trying to, as most parents are trying to teach certain lessons, but we also know sometimes teenagers is a portal, as part of the normal maturation process. They can feel like they're tuning you out. I felt, and also like any good coach, you want to get other voices around them. So I went looking for a third-party program that I could introduce to help reinforce these skills. I couldn't find one, being an entrepreneur, and I was encouraged by family and friends and business people to say, hey, start your own. So that's kind of how it started, was really creating a program for my own family that would reinforce the lessons that I felt were important.
Love that. That's so interesting. And you talk about like the difference between the academic skills, the skills they learn in school. You don't want your kids to get straight A's, but there were other skills that maybe weren't being taught in traditional education that it doesn't address. What kind of skill gaps, or what were some of the biggest skill gaps that you kept seeing, both as a father and as somebody trying to put this program together?
So there were really kind of 2 broad categories that I was focused on in my first version. We could talk about later versions where I added another leg, but really it was around people skills. So just connecting with people, how to be likable, just basic skills around that. And then character, just being viewed as having good values and strong character. So there were about 20 some lessons, and most were around those 2 key pillars.
Right. And then in the later version, what was the third pillar that you added?
So what happened was, let me give you the quick story of the later version. So I had this program. It was well received. I really liked it. I ended up selling my business to a big publicly held company. It was an insurance firm. And I thought, okay, I'll go back to doing the Boost. And that didn't happen. I really got sucked into the corporate world on this big publicly held company. It was all good. I had great relationships. It was another 17-year run, but Boost just got put on hold. So when I came back to it a couple of years ago, so we still had people skills, although some of the skills changed, character, but then realized that mentally, the mental health issue and the way kids were struggling mentally. And so really created what we say is the third leg of the stool, which is a healthy mindset. So, and we say, I have to have all 3 legs to be strong. So you have to have good people skills, character, and a healthy mindset. You need all 3. So that really was the third leg of the stool that we added.
Right. I love everything about this, because it is like, I'm the parent of 2 teenagers now, and yes, we're fortunate enough to have them go to schools that, provide them with great educations, right? They are learning many skills in school, but there is no sk you learn some of this stuff through experience, right? And you don't necessarily always not every kid's gonna get the same experience in school, right? And that could be the difference between, relationship building, right? You might stick to your group of friends and you're never forced to meet new people and learn how to get along with others, right? Or to take care of yourself, right? Whether mentally, physically, whatever it may be. Sure, most schools have a health class in high school, right? That gives them some basics, right? My daughter is taking one now, and they're learning CPR and they're learning some different valuable skills, but you don't get all the things like character building, right? You don't get the some of the mental health stuff. You might get some on a surface level, right? But as a father, like one of my goals for my kids is that they have the confidence to pursue whatever they dream of going forward, right? And it's hard to build up that confidence if you don't know what is out there and what exists, right? And so having additional resources out there to help these kids, pick up on things like communication and confidence and resilience and relationship building, it's 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 well needed, I think, right? And it doesn't matter what type of school you go to. It doesn't matter if you go to a big school or a little school, or if you go to a private school or public school. All kids have to deal with these things, right? They all have to deal with these, or have to build these types of traits, and how they build them. If there is a safer, more structured way to do that in a way that relates to them, it's just, to me, I think it's so important, so interesting. And I think also because I think as parents, we don't always think about this stuff, right? We're thinking about what's in front of us in the moment. And I think, a lot of dads, myself included, I've had times where I just kind of assume that my kids would pick this stuff up,
Mhm.
right? That they would just become confident people. They would become resilient. They would, figure out right from wrong. And, they would know how to build friendships and take care of others. And I think in a lot of ways, my kids do that, and I'm proud of them for that. But there were often times where I just kind of felt like I just assumed that they would figure that out.
Yeah.
Why is that assumption so dangerous? Because I imagine it's got to be something that could be like you're putting your kids in a kind of a vulnerable, risky position by just assuming they're going to figure this stuff out.
So first off, I would like you to become a spokesperson for the Boost program, because you just articulate exactly what it's all about. And it's so true. And this gap has existed for a long time. Even before I started this program 20 years ago, when you read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, they all say we need a course in high school, because that's really kind of where we start. We can talk about that. We need a course to teach this stuff because it's so important. And here,
Right.
yeah, now those books were written in the early 1900s. Then you fast forward 20 years ago, I knew how important it is. And now every adult, like the adults may not agree on a lot, but we all agree how important these skills are. It's the one thing every adult agrees on. And it's gotten so much more needed, and particularly in the phone-based world that kids live in today. So it's really, we can talk a lot about the phone, but at the end of the day, your point is well taken, that these are the skills. That's why I wrote a book called The Missing Course. So clearly education is so important. We need to learn how to read and write and be curious and learn how to study and all the important things. But why isn't there a course that takes you through some of this stuff? So again, I
Right.
just think it's the missing course. And that's really what I'm on a mission to get more courses and programs like this into youth hands.
I love that. So, you brought up phones, and there's obviously a lot of discussion around technology and the use of our phones, both as parents, but also for our kids as well. And I imagine when you initially built this program 20 years ago, I can't remember exactly when it was, but whenever you initially developed this program, phones and technology weren't quite the same, right? Things have changed over the past couple of decades. What kind of impact do you think that phones are having on kids these days? And not just in the short term, but kind of long-term impact in regards to how these skills that you're trying to build through Boost, the confidence, the resiliency, the communication skills, how how has technology affected that over the past, especially the past couple of years? And now we have AI too. Like there's so many directions we could go here, but just like,
We could talk for hours on this. And again, this is one every adult knows because we've experienced it ourselves. I mean, I feel addicted to my phone many times and fall under the spell of it. But just to mention how you mentioned the 20 years ago and how far we've come. So one of my lessons 20 years ago when I started this was telephone manners. And it was the idea that as a friend, you call up your friend and how you'd relate to the parent, and that first impression was so important. And obviously that doesn't happen anymore. So
right.
there's how far back it goes. But it's just, look, at the end of the day, technology has just caused so many, and we're not going back. I get that, but there's so many harmful effects from, and this again is well documented, between just the algorithms coming at you, the distraction, it doesn't make you feel good, the attention spans, the social media influence. So again, we could go on and on. I think most kids actually are starting to understand, but that's really what we're trying to do, is we're saying, okay, there's been a lot of documentation of, let's say, when someone's up to, like, say 14 or 15, you've got to really limit the phone time. Don't get them a smartphone, keep them off social media. And I see the new generation of parents starting this because they're starting to understand the harmful effects. I even look at my daughter, who I have two grandkids, and she's limited in the screen time. And even when I have the TV on, she's yelling, "Papa, get the TV off." Again, the new generation's realizing that. But my point is, okay, someone's 15, 16, and they have a smartphone at that point. We need to have real conversations with teenagers of these harmful effects to at least give them a chance so they can see it. Is that going to cause them to put their phone away forever and not touch it? No, we know that, because it is addicting. And that's really the starting point, is just the algorithms are coming at you, all the things that we just said, so that they can at least fight back. It's like not a fair fight. And
Right.
if we just give up and throw our hands up and say, this is the generation and they're, have no attention spans, etc., it's not fair. We got to fight back. We got to give them the tools.
Absolutely. I've had this discussion with a lot of people about what is appropriate, or when is it appropriate for your kids to start getting involved online and start doing some of the technology. And, someone had mentioned to me that, a lot of the big name tech billionaires aren't allowing their kids to go online, right? Even though they're building the tools for this, they're not allowing their kids to use it. And it's like, that's an example, like, so kids shouldn't be doing that. I disagree with that. I think that, for me, I know technology is not going anywhere, right? Or I believe technology is not going anywhere. So I don't want to hold my kids back from building that skill set to understand how technology works and what it's good for and what you can make of it, right? I don't want them to join the workforce when they're older and have no experience with the technologies that they're going to be using. So for me, it was, how do I do this in a way that gives them some flexibility, gives them some ownership in it, but talking through the scenarios beforehand, right? Of walking them through, here's what it's good for, here are some of the risks, here's what could happen, and here's the things we need to do to avoid, and to give that to them over time, right? It wasn't just like, okay, here's your phone, go wild, right? Go create accounts on every social media platform and do this. It's like, okay, we're going to talk about where you want to spend your time online and why that is, and what works, what doesn't work. How do you protect yourself from somebody that, that may be trying to do something nefarious online? How do you make sure that you don't give your information to strangers? Like, what is important, right? And work with them, ask them questions to get them to come to the conclusions on their own. Allow them to take ownership of the situation. To me, having that open discussion is much more valuable than holding them back. Because I think if they don't know how to use social media, I think they're going to struggle with communication going forward, right? Because there's communications happening on social media. But how do you do that? How do you use it in a productive manner, not a destructive manner, right? And having those open conversations, right? To me, I think a lot of this is about the willingness to talk to your kids about this, right? As opposed to just letting them to kind of discover it however they might discover it. So it's really interesting to me because, yeah, what we dealt with 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it may be, landlines were, really the only form of social media, right? It's not really social media. It's just that's your way of
Yeah,
being social,
yeah,
right? It's either that or go outside and see who you run into.
yeah.
So it's a very different. We're in a very different place today, and to some degree, I think this technology is sort of speeding up the need for these soft skills that you are trying to teach. Right?
Yeah.
It's you need to build that resilience more so now. It needs to be stronger. The way you treat others needs to be stronger today than it needed to be 20, 30 years ago, because now you're in front of more people, right? And more things are coming at you. And it's a lot more difficult to manage, particularly when we're talking about mental health. Like, how do you manage all these conflicting messages that are coming in from outside sources who've never experienced anything like this before,
Yeah.
right? So these skills that you talk about with Boost, like I see the need for it now more than ever. I think it's more important. It's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I think it's so easy for us as dads to neglect some of these topics. Cause like, is that the fun thing to talk about with your kids?
Yeah.
No, you probably want to talk about like
And this,
whatever your
yeah,
mutual interest is in. Maybe it's sports, maybe it's cartoons, maybe it's whatever it might be,
yeah.
right? Those are the fun things to talk about. But sometimes it's important to just talk about resilience. Things don't go your way. Like, how do you get back up and keep moving forward?
Yeah. So true. And that's why again, I feel like the Boost program is more important than ever because of that stuff. So 100%, couldn't agree more. The phone is real, and just even the social skills that when you're online and you're communicating, that's how you're communicating, and not doing it in person, it becomes
Right.
really, really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we both know from experience that teenagers are famous for tuning out their parents, right? Like
Yes.
they just they are their own beings. How did that reality shape the way you built the program? And kind of what does that tell us about how dads can better connect with our kids during these teenage years?
So teenage years are crucial. It really, at the end of the day, is you're always doing, and I know other guests, you need to be the role model, because even if they're tuning you out or it feels like they're tuning out, they are watching. So
Yeah.
just know that they're watching you every second. They're watching how you communicate people. They're watching how you handle people in the checkout line at a store, how you're communicating with your friends. They're watching how much time you're spending on the phone, which again, I have an issue with that as well. So again, you just need to really be the role model, and also realize that they grow up so fast. So now's the time to reinforce these skills. And even if it feels like they don't want to hear these things, that you just need to reinforce it. And as we said before, as any good coach, let's get some other coaches and minds and mentors around them to help reinforce the lessons. Every head coach has assistant coach or trainers or different mental coaches, whatever it may be, to reinforce it. It's really the same thing.
That's a great point. It's a great reminder that we're not in this alone, right? Like we could try to do as much as we can, but
And
there's always more that can be done. And it doesn't mean we have to do it all.
yeah,
It's surround our ourselves and the people we care about most with people that are going to, help our
absolutely.
kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's also and to focus in on the things that are important, because again, just I got caught up in the grades or what you got in this test or sports or whatever it may be, that in the long term, just didn't mean as much. And there were times there were certain lessons I wish I reinforced more, particularly around some of the mindset things, the idea of a growth mindset, the idea that you got to struggle to grow. There were times, I know the big term has been helicopter parents. Now it's snowplow parents, clear. So, which, certainly you want to be there for them, but I was as guilty as the rest, sometimes just wanting to fix everything and not let them fail or go through things. So that's a whole nother topic, but that is something we spend a lot of time in Boost with the kids is you're going to have to struggle to grow. Life is not easy. It's hard. And you learn from that. And you just got to get back up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel that one personally, right? It's like, I do just want to fix everything, right, for my kids. It's like, I feel like, okay, I just can do this and be done with it and take care of them. But like, what are my kids getting out of that?
Yeah.
Right? Because unfortunately, I know life's not forever, right? Like, I'm not always going to be around to fix things. And also, I'm not giving them the skills or the confidence to be able to do it themselves. And so I'm really holding them back by doing it for them.
That's
in
exactly
many
right.
cases,
You know,
right?
yep. But at the same, so I agree 100%. And at the same time, they need the skills. They need to be taught that. They need to how to rethink and reframe that stuff. So we spent again a lot of time in Boost on that. The idea of a growth mindset, the idea of again struggle to grow, that a little bit of stress is actually okay for you. Everyone says I'm stressed out, but like a little bit of stress is going to help propel you. The whole idea of setting goals, when you write down goals, you have a 50% better chance of achieving them. And I have stories around that. And you got to think of all the obstacles that are going to come up after you write down your goals, so you're prepared for it, with the
Right.
phone being a big one just because it's a distraction. So again, these are all things that are just great lessons, and it's great to teach. And what's interesting about Boost is it doesn't put everything on the parent. Again, the parent is clearly the head coach. They're the one deciding. Everything funnels through them for sure. But Boost gets a chance in a group setting, the way that we're doing it with other peers, where we get to role play. In many cases, we can videotape them so they can see themselves in different scenarios, have worksheets where they're rethinking things and really kind of addressing all these things. And it really, and I've been, probably my biggest surprise of it is the engagement of the students. And again, we're talking high school students. You know,
Right.
when I first went in, I'm thinking, you know, high school students, are they going to really be into this? Because I'm not sure I would have in high school. But
Yep.
when if you reframe it, that these are all skills that's going to help them get what they want, it's like the
Right.
light bulb goes off. And I think we've been successful with that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think to me, something you said is really interesting was that you have to not just you want to help your kids develop their own goals, but then breaking it down, like what are the obstacles that are going to come forward? What are the things you need to do to achieve those goals? I think what I found with, and I coach youth hockey for a long time. I did some coaching of youth baseball and stuff. What I found with kids, particularly as teenagers, but even younger, is the surface level stuff is easy for them to kind of figure out. Like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do next. This is what I want to be. This is what I want to become. This is like this is my ultimate goal, right? Sometimes it's more realistic than others, but allow them the opportunity to kind of discover for themselves. But I think what kids struggle with or don't have the tools yet, haven't been equipped with, is how do you do that? What are the steps? How do you break that down, right? And it's the same with dads, right? Like it doesn't really matter your age. And the more I am talking about this, the more I'm realizing like, yeah, it's easy for me to come up with my own goals, but do I always take the time to break them down into the smaller steps, right? You don't just go from this is what I want to do to doing it. There are steps you have to take, right? And usually the hardest one is the first step, right?
Yeah.
Because once you get the first step, then you take the second step and then take the third step. And now you suddenly have some momentum going towards achieving your goal. And yes, you might hit obstacles, but if you thought through some of those ahead of time, they're much more surmountable
Yeah.
than if you kind of just be like, okay, my goal is to, I want to make $1 million by, in the next 2 years. Okay, well, that's a wonderful goal. How? Right? Like, what are the first steps?
Yeah.
And for teenagers, it could be like, I want to become a lawyer someday. But before I do that, I want to get a job. I want to shadow a lawyer to make sure I kind of really like this, or I want to take classes to become a lawyer, make sure this is what I'm really interested in, right? It's taking that bigger goal and breaking it down into smaller goals and then smaller steps. Those are the types of skills that I think for many teenagers, they're hard. You don't know them until you do them. You have to experience them, but you don't know to do them until you have some of the softer skills, right? You need to have the confidence to be like, this is the goal I want and this is how I'm going to achieve it. You need to have the resilience to know that like, it's not always going to work out. But that's okay. I'm going to get up and try again.
Yeah.
Right. I need to be able to build relationships so I can, meet people that can help me get me closer to my goal. Right. You need those soft skills in order to achieve that ultimate goal. So I'm kind of piecing it together here in real time. Sort
Yeah,
of like,
no. So I've actually a great story, and I'm actually sitting here now. So when I was 15, and I don't remember doing. Let me take a step back. I was talking to my mom once a couple of years ago, and I said, "Hey," and this is back when I was in the business world, where I was teaching a team of people how to set goals, and we were writing them down. I told my mom the story. Hey, I was working with a team, and we were writing down goals. She goes, "Rob, I'm not sure I ever told you the story. When we moved from your house that you grew up, the house that I grew up in, I was cleaning out your desk drawer, and you had a piece of paper in your desk that said, 'When I'm older, I want a shore house for my family.'" Like when I had been 14, 15, wrote it down and put it in my drawer. And I'm actually sitting in it now. This is a second home, 3 houses from the beach for my family. My granddaughter's upstairs. Hopefully we don't hear. And it was because I wrote it down, and it just stayed with me. And I just fought through that and fought through things, a lot of which I wish I knew at 15 about how to fight through things, and some other lessons that I've learned that, again, life's not going to be easy and you got to struggle to grow, and that's just part of the journey. But again, I think that's just a good story of this writing down goals, even at 15.
Yeah.
When you write it down, there's something about putting it on paper, and statistically it's shown to have a 50% better chance of happening. If you write it down, it becomes real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to flip this around a little bit. We see what determination can get, right? Like, we see when you have some of these soft skills what you can accomplish. But for dads listening who may have teenagers now, or whatever age their kids may be, what are some of the signs that their kids may be missing some of these important life skills, even if they're doing well academically or athletically or elsewhere?
So I think the most obvious is just a relationship with others. So we spent a lot of time, and that was really the genesis of the original business, still a big part of it. Something big believer in, as I know you are, is just the connection with people. Life is all about the relationships and the connections. We're wired to connect. And again, the phones have interfered with that. So really, the biggest one there is it's about other people. It's not about you. You need to flip off the lights on you and put it on someone else. You need to ask them questions. You need to remember past conversations that you had with them. You can't try and one up someone, so as soon as they're done talking, you start talking. You need to understand verbal communication, smiling, all basic skills. So I think really those are the easiest to kind of see and detect. And look, certain kids are introverted and it doesn't come as naturally, and that's okay, because even those people can develop those skills. Some of my best friends were introverts when they were younger, but they just know when I'm with them, again, it's about me and how's this, or how they remember past conversations. So I think that's a strong point. And those can be taught. My again, I'll go back to my mom. When we were younger, when we were going to, let's say, my aunt's house, she would prep us in the car and say, so-and-so this is happening with your cousin, or this one's getting married. So when I'd get there, I'd be prepared with just a couple of questions. It doesn't take 42 questions, just a couple of things. Oh, I heard about this, or heard you're moving there. And then you just felt that connection. So again, these are skills that can be developed even at a young age. So that I would start with that.
That's a great example of your mom kind of equipping you with a skill, a socialization skill, right? Of, kind of prep you. Okay, we're going to talk to your cousins, so here's a couple of questions or things you can to kind of initiate the conversation. So if dads see some of these signs, we see our kids, maybe could use a little bit of help. What is the best way to approach it? Is it simply just the way your mom did, of like outlining, here's a couple of things you can do? Or I imagine it's obviously not anything negative, right? It's going to be some sort of more positive or straightforward reinforcement. What can we as parents do to help our kids when we see them showing some of these signs of missing some of these soft skills?
Yeah. So I think, again, it's starting with you as the role model, where they're saying I think 100% that it's positive. You're not doing it in front of someone that, hey, do this, when they're in front of their peers. It's behind the scenes coaching. And just give a couple little tips, just to get, even, just remembering someone's name. It gets me so frustrated if I don't remember someone's name and they're like, hey, Rob, and I've met them a couple times, and I just can't remember them. I'm getting older, so sometimes that happens naturally. But it just gets me so mad at myself. But that's the key is those little techniques. The great greeting, everyone kind of knows the handshake and the eye contact and talk about, but just an enthusiastic greeting and smiling, getting up when you see someone as opposed to, just sitting down. So there's just little things that you could kind of whisper in your child's ear as a dad. And again, just make sure that you're role modeling it as well.
Right. Because again, they take after what you do, not what you say. Yes. Right. Because you can say something and do the opposite. It's actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, where when we videotape in those scenarios and they get to see it on tape, like any athlete looking at their tape or musician, it just changes everything. They think they're doing some of these things, but once they see themselves on tape, which is again one of the benefits of the Boost program.
Interesting. Yeah. Obviously, we hear about professional athletes and collegiate athletes, like they're studying tapes to get better at what they do. So this is just like it's just like any athletic skill or anything else. You learn by doing, but then also analyzing like what you did. And I imagine seeing yourself back may not be comfortable, at least initially, but then you start to figure out like, oh, I never knew that I'm
Yeah,
always looking now when I'm
yeah.
talking to somebody. And
There was one school we just did an interview series. So school came to me and said, Rod, they had the Boost program and like, we want to really work on interviews. Our kids go for internships next year. And normally they'd bring in the companies that they'd be interns and they would just kind of throw them into it. And as thinking that it was practice, I was like, no, we got to train them first and help develop the skills. So we did a couple steps. We had an assembly. We talked about this stuff. We talked about you're interviewing them. You make it about them, not you. You got to be prepared in the interview. You got to interview, understand Michael's business and where he's from, give compliments, those kinds of things. But then we did the next step was peer-to-peer interviews where they videotaped themselves. And that's where they saw, oh, I was playing with my hair. I didn't look down. I was looking down. Didn't make eye contact. I didn't ask any questions. I wasn't smiling. So you're exactly right. I used to do this in the corporate world with young associates, particularly the sales team, and they hated doing it. They hated it. But once they saw themselves, let me do that again. I could do better. So
right.
Exactly. That's the key, is just see yourself on tape.
Right. Yeah. It's a way to become aware, right? It's another experience that you have, because that is, I think, how we learn best is through experience, right? We could read everything in the world, right? Yeah. And I'm a voracious reader. I love learning through books, but like, it doesn't matter until you apply it, right? And then once you experience it, then you can start to see it. Videotaping yourself is an experience. You're going through the process, and then you can evaluate kind of how you've done it.
So let's go back to the athlete. You don't become a good athlete just go into a game watching. It's practice, 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 practice. You don't become a musician just going to a concert. It's playing over and over and making mistakes. So it's really the same thing with these skills. Is you have to practice, you have to try 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've obviously had a very successful career, and you have 3 grown children who all seem to be doing really well for themselves as well. And you've got a budding family. So I'm curious, you have quite a bit of experience now as a father and as a grandfather. What's something you've changed in your own approach as a dad over the years that maybe you wish you had understood sooner?
So I think it's really, again, we kind of talked about the struggle to grow, that you can't jump in there all the time. And as long as and you can't get caught up in every little issue or problem. And I tend to do that, and I still do that. It's something I need to work on. So I think that's the biggest thing. In the scope of life, most of these things are minor issues. And they go, as long as they're a good person and they care about their family and they like themselves, as long as they have the big picture things, that it's all going to be good.
Right.
And look, even with the advantage, my kids in the Boost program, and I'm into this, look, there's still been plenty of struggles and different issues with all 3 of them. So it's never going to be this perfect, ride straight up that we all love for our kids, because we love them so much. It just doesn't happen that way, and they're all different, we know. So
of course,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's great perspective, because like you said, everybody's different. They're all going to have different reactions to different experiences, but life continues to move on regardless of what happens. And for me, at least, I found over time that I'm content with progress, right? I know my kids aren't going to cure cancer, right? I know they're probably not going to solve world peace on their own, right? But as they continue to mature and age, and I see them helping others, I see them being relied upon by their friends. I see them, trying to develop new skill sets. Yeah, it's like you said, it's not always going to be perfect, and there's plenty of bumps in the road. I go through them all the time myself.
Yeah.
But we continue to progress, and we continue to see that progression. To me, ultimately, I want my kids to be able to contribute to society in a positive way and help them. I want them to ideally achieve goals that are interesting to them, and help others along the way. To me, if they do that, like I think
No,
life
it's
is a
so true.
success, right?
Yeah,
Like that is my
it's so true. Yeah.
ultimate goal in life.
Yeah. But it is hard because again, you just want to help. You want to jump in. You know things.
Right.
Yeah, it gets. And again, as much as I know now, when I'm in my 60s, I still can fall into that trap. So it's a struggle.
Absolutely. But it's a great reminder that like we keep moving forward, right? And we can't, it's so easy, especially in the early days of fatherhood when your kids are really young and things are really stressful, right? You're not getting a lot of sleep. Your kids maybe don't sleep through the night every night. That it's easy to make things out to be worse than they actually are. And you don't realize that until time passes, like, oh, we got through that. Yeah. Was it a fun time when I was sleeping 3 hours a night? No, not really. But we had that experience. We got through it. And the next thing that comes up might be stressful, but it's temporary.
Yes, it's
Right.
temporary. Absolutely.
And so it's good to have that perspective of like, yeah, sometimes we just got to slow our minds down and be like, okay, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
It didn't necessarily work out the way I wanted to this time, but there's always next time, right?
And
our
there's
kids will continue
lessons to be learned. That actually, so the oldest who I started the program for, we had a conversation earlier this week, and there were certain things he said, and it basically was, I could have done better. He didn't blame anyone. You know, certain things have happened. Didn't blame anyone. I learned. You know, what can you say? Like that's it. Like as a father, I couldn't jump in and start coaching. Like that's it. He got it. Like he understood. So I think that is an important skill to have, not to blame and realize the mistakes and this is it, and I got to move on, and that was it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got another question for you that is a personal one for me, but I think a lot of dads will think about this if they're not already thinking about it. What is, now that your kids have grown up, they're out on their own. What's one conversation that you think every dad should have with their teenager before they leave home?
That's a good one. So, to me, I just always get back to it's about the other person and it's not about you. So I know I've said that before, but it's just so powerful and so strong. And the more I've gone on, but as I've just gotten older, I just realized the importance of that. And it helps everything. It just helps everyone. Helps your relationships. It just helps everything. So I think that's the main thing. It's not about you. It's about someone else. So that would probably be my biggest lesson to talk about. Certainly there's a ton of other ones, a lot that we've talked about, but that's probably the biggest.
I love that. We live in a world with other people, and it is easy to think about yourself, right? But it is more beneficial to think of others and your world tends to get enriched by having other people around.
100%.
Even though I'm an introvert, right? I still realize that my world is better with my friends and my family in it than it would be just me just thinking about myself all day.
Yeah,
right?
we were wired to connect. I didn't again understand, like I didn't understand it to the level that I do now. We are wired to connect, and that's just what makes life great. That's when you feel good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one more question before we get into the speed round.
Yeah.
If you could leave dads with one practical action that they could take this week to better prepare their kids for adulthood, what would it be?
So I'm trying to think of something that we didn't talk about, but we've, unfortunately, I come back to some of the things that we've talked about. And I would say the whole struggle to grow, that life is not going to be fair and it's going to be hard and you're going to have obstacles. You are gonna, and you just have to have, again, the tools and the mental, just knowing that helps. And again, I've only learned that in the last couple of years. I've been doing booths for 20 years, teaching this stuff, right? But that lesson I didn't know until a couple of years ago and really understand it the way I did. And it's really helped me. And I just wish I knew that as a 15-year-old. It would have saved me a lot of just negative energy.
Right. In terms of this resilience that you talk about, like, what should we as dads be doing to set the proper or the most effective expectation for our kids to pick up on? Because like we said, like it's modeled on action, right? It's like, it's what we do, not what we say.
Yeah.
Like, how do we?
Yeah. So I think, again, if that's the big issue, is struggle to grow, it's just as you go through stressful times, it's how you handle that. And it doesn't mean you just have to blow it off or be happy, but just how you have it, maybe have some conversations around it. Like, hey, I'm going through this tough time or this issue's coming up, but like, I know I'm going to get through it. So just seeing how you're handling that, I think
Right.
is good. And my parents were great mentors, and I had a lot of great mentors in my life, but no one really taught me that one. And I wish someone had taught me that one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there in involving your kids in some of your struggles. Now, certainly we naturally want to protect our kids from a lot of this, but it also there are times where it's beneficial to be forthright with them and to
Yeah.
explain, "Hey, this is the challenge I'm facing right now.
Yeah.
You know, this is what I'm trying to do to overcome it. You know,
Yeah.
how can you like this is the kind of support that I'm going to need around me."
Yeah.
And the kids, well, they might not completely understand what you're going through yet, but
Sure.
they'll start to pick up on it and see, you know, you're handling it in a productive manner, not
Yeah.
just letting it overwhelm you and take you away from
Absolutely. Yeah. Even
right.
if you don't, if you're just for some reason you just don't need to go into the detail of what happened, just hey, look, I'm going through a tough time, but I'm going to get through it. This is life, and this is it. And just seeing you do that again, as much as again, I hate to throw my parents or any other mentors under the bus, but just I didn't have that, and I wish I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, like a recent example is both my parents went into the hospital. They both had surgery in the same, like back to back days,
Mm.
and they live in another state. And it was challenging and stressful. And I told my kids, like, here's what's happening. Your grandparents are both having surgeries back to back days. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go fly down there. I'm going to drive them to the hospital. I'm going to stay there and get them home and make sure they're all settled before I come back. It's, I'm not going to be here to take you to whatever activity, or I'm not going to be here to do this, but here is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And if you want, like, you can call them the day before, wish them well, and you could talk to them after the surgery. Like, you can call them again, like getting them involved so they knew overly, like, they weren't overly scared or nervous that something bad was going to happen. It was just, this is a challenging time, and this is kind of how we expect it, right? It doesn't have to be this grand thing. I didn't need to tell them, I need to give them the medical reports, right? from like the doctors, but just like, here's what's happening, and this is kind of how it's affecting me. This is what I'm going to do about it. I'm hoping that sets the example for them of like when they get into a situation that's stressful for them, maybe, something happens to one of their friends, like, okay, how can I be there for them when that bad thing happens? Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the action we can take to demonstrate to them, like, here is one way they can be handled, right?
Yeah.
Here is a positive way to handle a challenging situation. So
Absolutely.
I want to go from the serious and challenging to the completely unserious. Speed round has nothing to do with anything. 5 questions for you. Starting with, what's the first kids show theme song that comes to mind?
Well, that's easy right now. Sesame Street.
Sesame Street.
I'm actually watching it with my granddaughter, who's 2, and we sing it together when it comes on. Right, she loves Elmo, and so that one's easy. That's lately. And I forgot I like that tune. So yeah,
That'll be stuck in a lot of people's heads
yeah.
for sure. What was your very first job?
My very first job. So I was an entrepreneur at a young age. So I literally organized a crew of a couple friends to do, minor landscaping, cutting some lawns and doing some things where I had a crew at like 12. It was probably three houses. It wasn't a big operation, but
right.
But that's kind of started the entrepreneurial spirit.
That's awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Would you rather spend 24 hours with a toddler-sized T-Rex or a T-Rex-sized toddler?
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. So are they tired? Did they have a nap? Because if they didn't have a nap, because I'm seeing it with my granddaughter, I kind of forgot about my kids. When she's tired and hasn't had a nap and she's getting into the 2-year-old. So I'm going to say if they didn't have a nap.
It's 24 hours though. So, at some point they'll sleep. At some point they won't.
Okay. Yeah. Give me the toddler. I want the toddler.
T-Rex sized toddler. Yeah. Well, do you have any particular reason?
I just love toddlers. I love the whole thing. So yeah, that's it.
So a giant toddler.
Yeah, giant toddler. Yeah.
Sounds fun. Yeah. Got it. What's your go-to karaoke song, or the one you would sing if you had to?
So you're not going to make me sing it though, right?
No.
Okay. As long as I don't have to sing it. So Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang.
Wow.
Technically the first rap song.
Yes.
Yeah.
Classic of all classics.
Yeah.
Great choice. And finally, what's the weirdest thing you've ever carried around in your bag, briefcase, or pockets?
Ooh. That's actually going to be easy. So I'm old school. I have a wallet, and I don't have it on me. Otherwise, I pull it out. And in it are pictures of my kids when they were like 5 and 6. So everyone's got all these, like, kids are like, what do you do? I put them in there, and it's almost like a good luck thing or
Yeah.
superstition. I'm not thinking about. So it's literally like, I have 3 kids. It's 2 of the kids when they're like 5 and 6. They're like class picture. It's still
Oh, wow.
stuck in there.
You
So that's kind of weird.
is the third kid grateful or
Oh, that's a
hurt
good
that they're
question.
not
We've never
included?
had that discussion. Yeah, that he should be happy that he's not in there. Yeah. We're mad. Why aren't I in there? So I don't know.
Right, right. It'd be interesting, interesting
Yeah,
question.
hopefully, there's not a psychological study. Oh, my dad had me in his wallet. That's why
Right,
I'm not
right.
doing well. Yeah.
Well, Rob, this is great. But before we wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity to share more about what you're working on, where listeners can learn more about you and Boost and anything else you'd like to point them toward.
Sure, yeah. So I think a couple of things. One is just go to boostprogram.com. You'll see a little bit more about the program. I've written a book called The Missing Course for Today's Youth that really talks about all this. And it's really written for adults to teach these skills to the next generation. There's a ton of worksheets that you can download, and again, it gives you some things to think about. So again, it's called The Missing Course for Today's Youth by Rob Heller. It's on Amazon, or again, go to Boost Program. You can see it there. And also, if that we're also building a community for anyone that works with today's youth. So a lot of schools or nonprofits or workforce development programs where we're doing a lot of work, even workforce development where everyone's trying to, trades, and maybe not everyone's meant for college, but even in the trades, you need these skills. So we're doing a lot of work around that. So we're creating a community of creating these. And what really, you had said it earlier, is it life skills? Is it social emotional learning? Really, it's soft skills. So it's really soft skill development for age 14 to 24. So we're creating a community that will be rolled out in September. But if you go to Boost Program and sign up for a newsletter, we'll start getting you some information when that's rolled out.
Awesome. That's great. We'll have links to all that stuff in the show notes.
Great.
Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I
Yeah.
appreciate both the work that you're doing and the perspective you shared around helping kids develop these skills, whether they're your own kids or the kids that you work with in the Boost program, that these are skills that they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives, right? These aren't one trick pony type skills. These are things that are very important, whether you're an adult or a child, and they're not always readily available to learn. So I appreciate you sharing all that with us today. Finally, before you go, if you're a dad listening to this and you find yourself in between navigating a season that feels different, head to gap2gig.com, subscribe to the Gap to Gig newsletter. It comes out every Friday, and it's a quieter space to reflect on work, life, and what really matters right now. If this conversation resonated, consider sending it to another dad who might need to hear it. Until next time, I'm Michael Jacobs. Thanks for showing up and listening to Gap to Gig.